poem of Paul Revere's Ride by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Listen, my children, and you shall hear the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April of 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers a famous day in year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch in the North Church Tower as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, and for the country folk to be up to arm. Then he said goodnight, and with muffled oar silently rode to the Charleston shore. Just as the moon rose over the bay, swinging wide her moorings lay, the Somerset British man of war. A phantom ship with a mast and spar across the moon like a prison bar, and a huge black hole that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile, his friend through alley and street wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arm and the tramp of feet, the measured tread of grenadiers marching down to the boats on the shore. Then he climbed to the tower of the old North Church, by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread, to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch. On the somber rafters round him made, masses of moving shapes of shade, by the trembling ladders, steep and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down a moment on the roofs of town, and the moonlight following over all. Beneath in the churchyard lay the dead, in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in silence so deep and still, that he could hear like a sentinel's tread, the watchful night wind as it went, creeping along from tent to tent, seeming to whisper all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead, for suddenly all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, patient to mount and ride, booted and spurred, with a heavy stride on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he had his horse aside and gazed at the landscape far and near. Then impetuous stamped the earth. He turned and tightened his saddle girth, but mostly watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church. As it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still, and lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and a gleam of light. He springs the saddle and bridle turns, but lingers and gazes till full in the sight, a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry of hooves in the village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and passing beneath him from the pebbles a spark, struck out by the steed flying fierce and fleet. That was all, and yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night. And that spark struck out by the steed in his flight, kindled the land into flame with his heat. Is the mystic meeting the ocean? No, he has left the village and mounted the sea, and beneath him tranquil and broad and deep. Is the mystic meeting the ocean tides, and round the isles that skirt its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge? Is heard the tramp of the steed as he rides. It is 12 by the village clock, when he crossed the bridge into Melford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises after the sun goes down. It is 1 by the village clock, when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and meeting house windows blanket bare, gazed at him with a spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work that he was soon look upon. It is 2 by the village clock, when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the bleating of the flock, bah, bah, and the twitter of the birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown. And one was safe and asleep in his bed, who at the bridge would be first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by British musket ball. You know the rest from the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, and how the farmers gave them ball for ball behind each fence and farmyard wall. Chasing the redcoats down the lane and crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load. So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went the cry of alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear. A voice in the dark, a voice in the dark, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. Echo, echo. So we're born on that one night wind of the past, through all our history to the last. The people shall awaken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere.